Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first YouTube video for Rooted in Magic. I'm Cassidy. And this
I'm
is
Baylee.
Baylee. And we wanted to start our first YouTube session with a little grounding breathing. And so I invite you guys to join if you'd like to, or you can just watch us have some breaths. Okay, so I invite you to find a space that you feel comfortable. You can maybe let go of some of the tension in your legs and kind of start feeling your seat, feeling the weight of your body, grounding into the seat. Maybe have your arms on your legs maybe, and you feel maybe some of the weight in your arms. Take a deep breath here. Inside out. Take one more. And start to notice any points in your body that might be holding tension, maybe your jaw, maybe your forehead, maybe your thighs. And just bring yourself into the present moment with that. And then when you're ready, it's back here.
I love in that because at first we were off balance. It was like you're exhaling while I was on the end there we both got into that balance space. So just saying that intention.
That's
synchronicity. Of course.
So we wanted to start by kind of introducing our intention for creating this content, creating this space for community, really, for facilitators, for parents, for anybody that works with young people, and for anybody that's really just on their healing journey. Even if you're somebody that doesn't work with children, but maybe you want to have children someday, right? And exploring maybe what that can look like when incorporating it into your healing journey. Because I'm definitely one of those people that wants to have my own kids. And so seeing how, mothers are doing that while they're healing makes me feel more like I can have children and still be working on that, right? So we're holding that space for all of you that are interested in being a part of, and really just rooting into this idea of magic, this idea that everything that's happening around us, everything that's happening within us, even the things that seem really hard, can be really viewed and rooted in our frequency, can really be connected with the magic, instead of maybe some of the lower frequencies that we can all easily fall into or have already created patterns around.
Yeah, it's like we grew up in a world that has been ruled by the lower frequencies, by the stories of lack, of scarcity, of competition. It's a lot of, I'm getting a lot into the concept of like shame and like, am I good or bad? If I'm bad, I'm deserving of this. Those are the lower frequencies that keep you out of the magic of, but wait, I'm abundant. Wait, I get to be loved unconditional. Wait, like everything is possible 100% of the time. So it's just recognizing, we're going to go into today, what are the ends? And then how do we play in this middle space to start shifting our beliefs into the magic, as opposed to literally what we've grown up with, our parents, their parents have this ruling energy of, again, those lower frequencies.
Yeah, it's intergenerational like trauma.
Yes.
Through, and that whole fight, flight, or fawn concept, right? When we're living in that amygdala space, when we're living in that space of scarcity, in that space of fear, whether it's a realistic fear or not, we're accidentally kind of putting ourselves in this place where we're going to attract more of that emotion. And so if we're able to like kind of zoom out and see, your friend Savannah, I think, talks about how everything that happens is perfect, right?
Mm-hmm.
This YouTube that we're doing right now is exactly how it should be.
Yep.
So to root into that instead of into like, well, it could have been better and this could have happened. I think a lot of us are in that kind of self-critic space, because we've learned to make ourselves feel guilty, to motivate ourselves, to make ourselves feel afraid, judgment, things like that, to motivate ourselves instead of using, magic and viewing the world like that.
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult pieces with like the fear-based beliefs is that we tell ourselves these stories as if they're truth, right? It's like we were having technical issues. It's like we could have gone into, this isn't working, so we're not supposed to do it, and this says something about our, community, and that just like we keep trying to tell ourselves these truths based on fear, as opposed to, like you said, okay, this is perfect. What is another possibility? What else can this be showing me? What do I get to practice right now? Like we got to practice a lot of patience and, just acceptance and perseverance, right? It's like, let's try this. And
Patient, right?
yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, fear, it just like it locks you in, like these are the truths and this is bad. And, when I spiral, that's how my brain does it, right? And then it just holds you.
Right.
But you start to release that into, okay, what else is there? It's a lot freer, a lot more open. And then you yourself feel more open, right? Like,
yeah, because that pathway of, you go from, you're having a fear response, right? And so that's like extreme emotion, cortisol running through, and then it moves into that you make a story, right? You have this truth that you've decided, story of this experience, right? I'm frustrated, and if we had just started earlier and I hadn't been late to the call, whatever, right?
Yep.
It wouldn't have happened or whatever. And so then you go from fear to a story that becomes, that you take in as a truth. And then it goes to control. It goes to now take this out into the world and control based on this truth, based on this false sense of fear, right? You're rooted into fear so deeply that it's almost like your roots can't really tell what's really reasonable to be afraid of versus what isn't, and what's healthy stress and cortisol levels versus what isn't. So you go from that fear then to the true, your story, really. And then to the controlling tendencies that end up showing up in your life, whether it's controlling yourself, right? Saying, well, I should, you're guilting yourself to try to control yourself so you don't do it again, whether you're trying to control other people out of fear that they're going to maybe hurt you or hurt themselves or have, impact in some way. And so you're ending up out of that fear. Every decision you're making, the way that you're interacting with everyone is in this controlling negative space that feels really oppressive, both to you and to the people you're around.
Yeah, it's like my physical body, when I go into anger, when I go into those spaces, like I feel the tightness, I feel that clinging to control, just like you said. And something else I heard is like, when it's happening, you go into story about why it's happening. So into past, blame, shame, whatever. And then you're projecting a story about what it means about your future, right? So you're living not even where you are, fighting for control to, make sure an outcome doesn't happen that may not even happen.
And you can't control it anyway, right?
You can't control it anyways.
That's this whole thing with like parenting, right? And like working with young people is like, we act like we can control them. We cannot. Even at our best, like our best effort of controlling them, whether it's manipulation or physical punishment or these other things, it actually doesn't work, right? Maybe there's a short-term result that you might notice as a person working with young people. And what I would say is, one example I could share from recently is like we were having a little bit of roughhousing going on in the learning community that I hold space for kids in. And they were it was overwhelming for me. It felt unsafe to me. I'm a, only child for a long time, girl. I had little sisters, so very kind of sensitive around like a lot of physical activity, because it kind of makes me, I was not into all that stuff. So for me, I had like kind of a personal response there. And I do also see the need that they have. And I can either take that and be like, okay, my fear response is they're going to get hurt. I'm going to get hurt. Other kids are going to get hurt. Parents are going to get mad. they're not going to feel respected, like, or like that they consented, right? One kid, it might go too far and someone gets angry.
Yeah.
One kid doesn't consent. Someone actually hurts the other person intentionally. There's so many things in my mind that I've already decided are going to happen, right? Because of that fear, it's automatically, right? And that's because in survival, right? When we are, native people and we were trying to survive, right? We said, okay, every time there's this animal, that's dangerous. This is a healthy thing for me to have this fear response so that I can avoid this thing. So it's coming from our brain trying to protect us and trying to support us. But it ends up really going counter to the intuitive way that we know we want to be in community with other people. It's just like, we don't know what that can look like. So that's one of the things that I'm seeing with like Rooted in Magic, is this idea of like, what's that in between? How can it start looking different? Seeing the possibility of what it could be like, seeing where we are or where we can fall into, and then how do we bridge between? And then we're obviously always going to be seeking that, right? You learn until the day you die. If you're not learning until the day you die, you're already dead.
Yeah.
So there is, how do we see both of these fully, see the possible and magic of that, and then the magic of the journey as well.
Yeah. I love what you said too. It's like the way stories come into our lives, the way fear responses come into our lives can be so simple and so understandable. Like, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old, and the older one is constantly, I want that. That's mine. Taking. And I sit there and I'm like, what if he develops the story of everything I want gets taken from me? But I'm seeing how simple, how easily that story can become a belief for him. So it's like when we're looking at unraveling our own stories and beliefs and looking at our fear responses, you're always good at pointing out, it's like, and it's okay, right? And that's okay that it's there. And that's just been a part of you and it's supported you. And now we're in a space of how can we shift it? How can we look at something else, as opposed to these fear pathways that have become so ingrained, from native people times to now, it's like, it has been, and that's okay. And now we're opening the door to, and what else can look like, right? As opposed to like your horse playing guys, it could have been old way, it could have been, I'm afraid, I don't like it, shut down, you're done. But instead you're looking at, okay, there's a need here. We get to find a way to do this. What can that look like?
Exactly. And I think too, even sharing, right, being vulnerable with the young people and saying, not that they have to carry it, right? So there's a difference between saying, I feel this way when you do this, and it's really hard for me.
Don't do it.
Take on my emotions and like, support me through my concern with roughhouse. So we don't want to put our needs on them. And it's still helpful to model sharing what our experience is in those moments. Like we can say, hey, I've shared this before with Nerf guns, because I had a kid point a Nerf gun straight at my face and I got really triggered and it made me feel really uncomfortable. But I'm just, again, wasn't my scene. So I can share that with them, exactly what I just said to you and to the people that are maybe watching. I felt kind of unsafe, and it wasn't that I was unsafe, but I can still share that, like, I felt nervous, I felt a little bit anxious, because I just really want you guys to be safe and I want to feel safe. So I'm just sharing that. What do you think we can do working together, right? So what ended up actually happening is we kind of started that conversation, and then I was like, well, I'm noticing there's these corners. I'm noticing, that some of you guys that play, like, a lot of times when this happens, one of you really does get hurt and like ends up kind of crying, and I'm a little bit wondering about how you guys are going to maybe navigate this so that those concerns I have maybe can be a little bit lessened. So it's really just being vulnerable and saying, like, we can meet in the middle, and also saying, like, I'm a person too, and sometimes I'm bothered by something, and it's not because you're doing anything wrong. It's because I have past experience that impacts me.
Yeah, not the blame. And I love the separation of, I get to be responsible, let me support you in being responsible, and let's all create something together. Like, your point about not controlling children is, oh my God, so true. It's like, they don't, like, I had this realization, it's like, my kids don't have to listen to anything I say, ever. They don't have to do anything that I ever say. And so how do I then create a space where we get to be working together? Because like the old programming of punishment, of control, of, you know, trying to set these boundaries for our children. It's like they're not being responsible and they're not learning how to navigate that themselves. They're relying on, well, this is said it was bad, so it's bad, you know, and well, this was told me this. And it's like, but they might have a need that crosses into what was considered bad. So how do they, am I bad? And, you know, it's
relying on me to like intervene and say, stop.
yes.
Right? Versus navigating, oh, that person's face changed. And so maybe, or they're moving away from me now. Maybe they don't consent to this anymore. Oh, their fists are getting tight. Like, oh, corners, you know, like,
yes.
Honestly, like that's what it is. It's so different. And a comment I'll make too is that a lot of times young kids, when they're feeling a lack of autonomy, right? Like if they're feeling really out of control in their own life, they just, like your age kids, they just won't poop.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can control this. I'm not joking. And they'll have like incontinence and like issues and like problems from it and like UTIs for not going to the bathroom and like won't, you know, take all their clothes off as soon as you put them on. And sometimes that's normal, but if they're doing it constantly, that's a dynamic, right? That something's going on for them, that they're not feeling heard, or there's a need again that's not being met. And so they don't mean to be like, I'm not going to poop, I'm not going to eat, whatever. They're doing that because that's all they have to control. And you and I have talked about how I'm a picky eater and how my parents got divorced when I was like 2. And that was a very volatile time where I wasn't really in control of anything. I don't remember that, but looking back and kind of just like intellectualizing that a little bit, even though I wouldn't recommend doing that a lot. I can see how that would have happened for me to then control food. Right? Control something that I could control. So saying, I'm not going to eat this, I'm going to eat this. You guys don't have time to fight with me. So this is my one control thing. And so as an adult, I still struggle with the vulnerability that needs to come when I try new foods.
It's like a vulnerability is like a key piece, right? It's like on the frequency chart, there's, it's like the emotional frequency chart, it ranks, you know, shame is the lowest, God consciousness is the highest, goes through. And really what we're talking about is like the lower bracket being rooted in the fear, the upper bracket being rooted in the magic, in that source space. The switch, the middle piece is courage. Once you tap into your courage to be vulnerable, to tap into your intimacy, to express your feelings, right? Like, when we're in that fear, we talked about, it's like, that's the control, right? I'm going to have this is what I'm doing, and this is my control, and I feel these things, and the power struggle.
Okay. I'm taking notes. I'm not listening to you.
No, you're good.
Everything you're saying is so good.
So like that, to cross the border is the courage piece. And so if you're finding yourself like, maybe you've been really harsh punishment. That's how you were raised, and you have kids now and you want to try something new, but you're afraid, right? We've been told if you don't control your kids, they're going to walk all over you. If you don't spank your kids, they're going to be terrible people. Like,
they're not going to care about anything. They're going to just do nothing all day. They're going to just.
Yeah, it's like all these fears. It's like, so that's how we get wrapped into continuing on things that may not feel very good to us. It's like, well, I don't want my kid, like, because we care about them and their future, and oh my God, but just having that courage space to recognize, I kind of want to do things different. And my first step is always, because we never just know the answer, right? I never just like, oh, I believe now, I have this new answer. It's like just opening up to, is there a different way? Like, can my heart lead me to some new information? Can I be open to speaking to someone who does something new?
I like the openness too.
Yeah, and that's scary, right?
Oh my gosh, because it's again a vulnerability.
Yep.
And vulnerability takes courage, right? The whole thing is like Brene Brown 101. Likes Brene Brown, right? Her first talk was about vulnerability, and she talks about courage a lot too. So that's just something to bring in. But just to like what you're saying, I think that oftentimes when we're in that I think we had it. It's the in-between. In that in-between space. Oh, this is what it was. It's about what I was just saying. But I was doing a meditation last night. I went to a breathwork session, and it was amazing. And she had us do a visualization after the breath work that was around like, you're sitting in your favorite space. For me, of course, it was like a beach in Puerto Rico. Wear the clothes you're wearing now, and you're noticing all the things, all the you're grounding into like the senses that would be a part of that. And then you see like a figure walking towards you, and it's you, that higher frequency that already exists in you.
Yes.
It's at you. And like they were like, so what do you both are you.
Yep.
You're already there. And so that's something to really help, like to trust that version of you already exists, and it's already there, and it's already loving you, and it sees and it knows that bridge is what you're seeking, so I think just to hold that too for yourself is just that idea that like that whole, it reminds me of like when reparenting, right? Or talking to your inner child as well, or like your younger self, right? You are a younger self than maybe, obviously you will be, maybe not maybe. You obviously will be older at some point, right? And so to hold yourself, because I think a lot of times we depend on other people to make ourselves and our journeys feel valid because they're the norm. And so to be able to hold yourself is just a beautiful thing, and say, okay, future self, I see you. Past self, I see you. That way you don't have to depend on other people to see you grow.
Yep. Yeah. What I feel too is like the higher self, like every desire, every like deep rooted dream, secret dream, desire you have exists. And there are breadcrumbs from where you are to where it is, because like time is not linear. It just all is happening at the same time. So it's like, there are breadcrumbs and little signs and tips and supports that you have left behind to get you where you want, right? And I love your piece about putting it back on yourself in a sense of like trust. Like I went through a major stage of like, well, this coach is smarter and she's more spiritual and she has that, and I need a new program. I need a new this. I need a new that. And I'm just so in this space of like, I don't want to really look anywhere outside of myself right now. I just really want to come back in as like, what do I feel? Like, what do I believe right now? Like, what's my truth?
And that's too that
that's okay.
Want to reflect with kids too. Like one of the things that I like is like, I'm feeling proud of myself. Let me just sit and feel that. And the same thing with kids, right? Instead of me saying, I'm proud of you, saying, they come up and they're like, oh, I did this thing, right? And I'm like, oh, how did that feel in your body? How do you feel? What's your favorite part? What makes you proud? How do you feel? And so I think a lot of times we've been told this is, again, this external validation or lack of validation. And then we overcompensate, we morph ourselves, we feel less than, we feel like we can't ever get to that place.
Shame, it's like you're either validated or not, or judged, right? There's like 3 tiers when you're looking for external, and like shame is the lowest frequency there is. Like unworthiness and shame is the lowest, furthest point from infinite love, abundance, God consciousness, and so just like when that's put on us and then we internalize, and that becomes our critic, right? Like I'm very careful with my kids, like to not go there, right? Do I still make mistakes? Do I still come from that space? Sometimes, yes. And I get to have forgiveness and regroup, but just being conscious of like not shaming, like you did this, you are bad, right? That's like,
and if you're doing that to someone else, like one thing I'd invite you to do is like tune into where you're doing that to yourself. But like I guess the obviously, like I recommend that for anybody, but the you that's watching and the me that's talking to myself, because I think that when we are externalizing anything, like any of our behavior is coming from something that we were first doing to ourselves, right? Back to the story, we're choosing the story. And then let me pause. I have experienced clinical depression. I know there are lots of things that you can't just think your way through or feel your way through. So I understand that those kinds of things are relevant, and there are lots of different tools that I recommend people exploring. So if you're doing something like therapy or taking medication or anything like that, that can go in tandem with, a spiritual journey, and that both of them can help serve you. So it doesn't have to just be like, one or the other. Baylee and I had a conversation about like being more holistic about the way we live and the way we support ourselves. And so the way you're doing it is right. And if it's not, then you'll continue to explore what works for you. But I just would hate anybody to feel that by saying these things that we're discounting the reality of mental health. Things that are very real and very chemical. Sorry. So I was saying
story.
Thank you. So the stories we tell ourselves, right? That's a choice. And so as we're choosing that, it's the same idea in this case of like, we're choosing that for ourselves. That's the story, right? And in this example that we're talking about too, we're choosing, what was
to believe, like, because we went to school together, college. I studied the human body, and I was like, okay, I get it. Everyone knows be healthy, but still some people do, some people don't. So I was like, I need to go further. Got my master's exercise psychology, really got into mindset and the motivation factors and things like that. And I was like, okay, but I still think there's one step further. And that's where my spiritual journey has come in, because like you said, you can think anything. You can positive self-talk, you can do these mantras, you can do these things. But until your belief shifts, at least in my experience, nothing is really shifted. It's more so it's gotten better. These steps are necessary. They're all part of the journey and they're important. But the deep rooted, if you're still rooted in a belief that I am bad or I am unworthy or I am unlovable, that's going to seep up, right? It's the shifting into, okay, I may not believe it fully, but what if I am lovable? Then I'm going to take this risk. You know, like what if I am worthy? Maybe I will dream a little bigger.
Yeah. And how would it feel to have that different story, right? So one of the things, given advice around is like, okay, so how does that story feel, right? If you believe in the story that you're defaulting to, how does that serve you? What does that feel like? What's another choice that could be possible? How does that feel already to even imagine over here, right?
I'm getting like chills.
Feeling in your body, right? All of that
yes.
stuff. Yes. So 100% what you're saying.
Yep. It's a whole, like as your beliefs shift, your mindset shifts, the way you handle emotions, like your emotions, you can't just, I will never be depressed again. I will never be angry again, right? But how you handle yourself in those moments, like how you then behave and show up, like it all just starts transferring each, like I've gone like 30-day health kicks, just like super planned out, really did, my body needed it, right? I've done super lazy, just self-love myself points, like every part of the journey is your soul saying, I need this right now. Like your healing needs this right now.
Right. And I think you can bring in things in life that mute that inner voice. Again, whether it's like just constantly defaulting to distraction, right? I think if you're in a really intense emotional place, like, yes, I definitely say a distraction can be a good choice. And in a place where you can start to be like, okay, what else is possible? Especially if your body's and your heart might be feeling like, oh, like not just like, oh, I'm chilling, but like, oh, like I wish I was motivated to do something else, but I'm here. And like decompressing, but it's not good for me. I can tell it's not the best thing for me, but not because I'm judging it, because I can feel it. And then what can it look like to do something different? Back to what we were saying before about the, like, you kind of saying like externally trying to say like, you're bad, blah, 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 like telling judgments to kids and shaming them. Like, why would you take his toy? So mean. Like, why don't you care about how he feels? Blah, 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 blah. And for me, the first thing that I do is shame myself when I'm in those situations. Why didn't you check your email before? That parent really needs this. That kid really could. Why didn't you bring that toy for that kid? Why are you forgetful? Why are you whatever, right? So being hard on myself. And then that can also happen with like my partners, right? Like when you have a partner, you can also project that onto them of like, they're not being enough, or they're not helping you enough, or they're, and that, unfortunately, even though it's really, like you said, the lowest frequency, it's also one of those things that no, not right now. Can I trade this in? My mom has an extra phone. Yes. Sorry.
Speaking of partners.
Yes, partner.
Yeah.
And example boundary, and then maybe you heard a little bit of a tone that can happen. So see, again, it's like, oh, you know, it immediately gets to that place of like, I'm afraid that we're going to look unprofessional. And so then I'm immediately like,
story. Yeah.
You just saw an example of it. Right. And then I had a moment where I was like, oh, it's okay.
Yep.
I can listen to one thing. It's not as big of a deal as I make it. So that's the other thing, is like you building things up in your head like they're so big. Of course you're going to be afraid. And so when you go back and you're talking to yourself in that harshness, one of the things that you can start to do is maybe start even keeping track. Because what I've done is I've done it where I like tally when I'm noticing that inner critic being so loud at me. So wait, what am I saying to myself? Oh God, like, gee, yeah. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to hold this. And so the first thing of like getting to know that story and those stories, if you don't, if you haven't really like explored with that yet and you want to play with it a little bit, would be to like start tallying when you find yourself telling those stories. And then see, I guess for me, one of the things I try to see is like, can I even just like, even if I'm not choosing a different story, can I reel that story back in a little?
Yeah.
So can I not continue to go down that spiral, like you're saying? Can I catch it where I'm like, oh, I see that the spiral's coming. I see that. And then grounding into like, how am I feeling? Telling myself, I'm feeling this. I'm aware that I'm feeling this. It's okay that I'm feeling this. And then start moving through.
Yeah. And like me, I like doing, we talked about earlier, it's like taking that step back and just recognizing like, I'm feeling this way. This is a story. Your brain is going here. This is just a story. Like, again, even if you don't disprove it or you don't drop that belief in that moment, you're still shifting out of this is truth.
It takes the power.
Right? You're like disempowering it. Yes. Now just like that just detaches those like pathways.
Yes.
Right? Just calling it out.
Holding.
Yes.
Whatever you're holding, it's like kind of.
Yes.
Right? Like, yeah.
And then you just like the kind of the most like toughest part about this journey is like you think you heal something and then it comes up again, and then you just get to heal it deeper, and you heal it deeper, and you heal it deeper, and it's just really the same tools of, okay, here's where I'm at, maybe this happened, I see where it's coming from, this is the story, okay, right, like how can I handle this moment the best right now? You know, and then next time maybe you catch yourself a little higher, maybe you pick a different coping skill, or it doesn't trigger you as intensely.
Right. Or something's come into your life that's a new resource that you're able to like lean into. Right? So when things start showing up for you, you're at least open enough to receive those to start integrating into your experience. And another thing is like going back to what you were saying about like that idea that like we just get so rooted into this fear response, and what can happen is like we feel like it's super safe because we've had really deep roots, right? So if we're this little plant, we've got really deep roots in that pathway of fear response, right? It's really deep, it feels really safe, it's like our roots are like holding into the ground like this.
No, we know it, we know what's going to happen, we know how we're going to feel, we know how our partner's going to respond, we know everything,
and we've survived.
And we still don't like it.
We've survived though.
We've survived, yeah.
Piece of things, something not to forget too, is the plant is surviving. So we're like, but we're good. Look, we got a leaf here. We got a leaf, you know, whatever. And like my bun goes
almost like, a flower.
Right. But then it's like, again, you're surviving, but you're not thriving. Right.
Yeah.
So this whole idea of like, it's not something where you want to just grab the freaking leaf top part that's showing over the soil and rip it out. Right. So that's kind of what we're talking about here, is like not just being really gentle with yourself, not just saying, oh, this is the bad way, here's the good way. Right. It's that whole judgment of like, oh, I'm not at this frequency and I'm this lower person. And like we said, we're all of that person. We're all of those versions of ourselves. And so instead of holding that, like, again, those polarized things, and then that leading you to feeling like you need to make a huge shift in your life in order, and it's going to be intense, and it's got to be hard. You're going to fast for 10 days, and then you're going to, you know, go on a retreat, but it's going to be really stressful because you have to get to like Cambodia. I don't know. And
I was going to say Thailand.
Somewhere. And so, so, I mean, it's those kinds of things where you don't have to make it some big jump. You can really be gentle with yourself. And one of the things I would say, even before you try to unroot yourself, right, in any kind of way, is really just starting to maybe play with like, what does fertilizing that soil look like? What is watering that in a different way look like? What if more sunlight could shine on that plant, right? Maybe the roots are still rooted in some of this fear, but maybe when it starts to feel that something else is possible, and kind of starts to feel that energetically, right? Because plants and roots totally feel energy, right? There's tons of statistics that show that roots communicate with other roots.
Mm-hmm.
And also that, if you talk nicely to a plant, it actually makes the plant grow more. It's a proven thing. It's not just like something people say in a kid's science experiment. Like, it's a real fact that if you say nicer things, because it's not even about the words, right? It's about the energy. So plants can feel that too. So just thinking about yourself like this intuitively understanding plant that's been rooted in the way society has made us to be in order to be safe, in order to stay alive, to survive. So instead of going like, oh, you guys are bad roots, it's like, no, oh my gosh, thank you so much for structure that when the wind is blown, I've still been able to stay. You know, and that's why you've rooted deeper, right? A piece of grass gets blown in the wind so that the roots go down deeper. So you've been blown in the wind, and wow, look at what you've done, and start playing, right? Again, playing with the plant, like, again, maybe moving it into a windowsill versus like over in the corner, like it's stuff like that. So that's the big thing that I feel like we're here to do, is to talk about that journey, to share where we are, to share what we learned along the way. I think a lot of times people feel like they don't have a lot of wisdom to share if they're not experts, kind of like what you were saying, where you had a coach that you felt like this, she was this higher than you, and that, you needed to be better. We're not here to say that we're better. We're here to say that, like, this is really hard, and it's really beautiful, and it's really hard. And we're gonna just keep sharing what we learn along the way, and hopefully, continue to build a community of other people that are doing the same thing. So we definitely invite you to join us with all of the thingies, and not ever feel like you need to be doing everything right, because we're not, and we'll definitely tell you some of the things that we're learning along the way and making.
And it's like those, when you shift into, okay, it's all happening for me, this is all perfect, right? When those shame moments or those breakdowns happen, you get to start to come from, okay, and what is this showing me? How do I get to be in this? Like, I had like a trigger moment, and I was like, and the way I handled it, it like provided me such experience of like, man, I've taken a step up, So it's like, I experienced this that was kind of lower, right? And I got to walk away from being like, man, I get to like be proud of myself, right? Like, so we can experience similar things to see how we come out the other side sometimes. Or like you said, being in that, just the little tips and like being proud of yourself there. I was doing cards while we were having technical issues, and I got the grateful card 3 times, like 3 different shuffles. I was like, what's the essence of this video? What's something that's really needs to come through? It was like just grateful, gratitude. And, like you said, like, I've survived, like, I've made it here. Like, look how far I am now. Like, these are all pieces of me, and my path, receive it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And allow yourself to receive it without having to have external validation to do that. Really, again, see yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I like what you're saying too, because I think a lot of times when we watch the circle, we can see when things come full circle and really see ourselves in that. But if we get lost in the drama of the circle, we oftentimes don't see, what comes to fruition as far as how we can how we show. And again, like, that contrast brings us back in. So even if we end up finding ourselves there again, right, there's this idea that like, hi, here it is.
Hello,
I remember you, and that's helping me remember what I'm seeking and what I really value showing up like, and it's okay. Right?
Yes.
And it's okay.
And it's okay.
And, you have support in order to, have other people share that with you too, and like learn from each other and share tips and these things. So I'll invite you to do one thing at the end of this video. First, I would like to, of course, share that we have all the social medias. We have the TikTok, we have the Instagram. We're in our 30s, so we call it the TikTok. No, I'm just kidding. We are going to, we have a YouTube, right? That's where you are right now. Hi. And we're really excited to keep sharing. We're going to be working on like a newsletter, and eventually creating maybe some community spaces where we can actually meet virtually live and talk more and share more, and get more intimate relationships with you guys that are maybe on this journey too. And so again, that was all information. The challenge that really, maybe let's rephrase it. Let's rephrase it. It's not a challenge. It's an invitation. Sorry, that's what I said the first time. Different energy.
Yes.
And The thing I would like to invite you to do is find one moment where you're feeling not magic, where you're feeling just like this is not magic, right? Like my guy got a Swiffer the other day, and at the top that you hold on to do the Swiffer wasn't compatible with the rest of the thing, and it all came in the same box, right? So that's like, go, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. I'm so mad. I'm going to call Swiffer. Have this whole story of like, this always happens to me. I never can get what I want.
Yeah.
And instead, right, like choosing to see the magic in it of like, oh, it's kind of funny. And so I was like kind of scrubbing all low, being silly. The kids are laughing at me. And then I was like, and it's also kind of a good height for the kids. So that's a good advantage, right? So again, kind of leaning into the magic of it. And then literally I was acting a fool, scrubbing all low. Are you good? You're
yeah, sorry, call's coming. It's good.
It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
So then like, you know, kind of making it just fun, making it magic, saying like, how can we be more playful with this instead of so discontented? And so I find a time, I think it's just discontent.
I think it's a word.
So I invite you to find a time where like maybe something feels like it is not a magical thing, and then just say like, you know, how could I change my frequency or adjust like my perspective to see if the magic really is there and where it is. And it can be in you too. It can literally be like you just choosing to make it silly and not make it heavy. So, but that's
release.
Don't hear me saying like I got it figured out. That was one example, and at first I found myself telling the story. So I still took me a while to pivot, and I think if I had been around other people, I might have not had the same ability to. So there's also there's all these factors, right? So please. You have to show up perfectly again at all. But if you want to take that invitation on, definitely let us know in the comments. Let us know through social media how that's served you. Did it work? Did it not work? What came up? And, we can definitely continue to have conversation.
Yes. Love it.
So thank you for joining us on this magical YouTube. And we look forward to creating more content to support you and ourselves, honestly.
Yes. Love you guys. And
love you guys.
Yeah.